All right, guys. So before we get into the next phase of nutrition and training regimen, I want to make sure that I have a clear baseline. So what I've done is I just did a full in-body scan to see what my body composition is looking like. And for those of you who don't know what InBody is a machine, glorified scale that you stand on barefoot. So you're going to hold two sensors with your hand, and then you're going to allow electromagnetic frequencies to kind of go from your feet to your hand, conducted through water. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you a breakdown of what your body's composed of: lean muscle mass, body fat percentage, skeletal fat, visceral fat. Now, this is going to give us a detailed breakdown of fat mass, lean muscle mass, hydration, overall balance. Over the next couple months, I plan on trying to add lean muscle mass while keeping my body fat at the percentage it's at, or even decreasing it. So we're going to see if we can do a bulk with putting on muscle mass while not adding any body fat. Let's go through the numbers and we're going to see where we're starting from. So my current weight is 197.7 pounds. Of that 197.7 pounds, 95.9 pounds of that is skeletal muscle mass, which is pretty good. My body fat mass is about 31 pounds, which brings me to roughly 15% body fat. When looking at these three metrics of weight, skeletal muscle mass, and body fat, you'll see skeletal muscle mass is the peak of that triangle, which means of your body weight, majority of that is muscle mass, and that's a good indicator of health and body composition. I feel at this point of the year, the summer has ended, we're in the fall. I always am really lean in the summer. Around September, it's my birthday time. I kind of do a deload. I'm not as locked in on my nutrition, but I use that time to really reset my mind, just give myself a break. Don't be so hard on myself with the diet. And it makes sense why my body fat's at that. But however, I do feel like I have the abs where I want them to be. I can still see them. They're still visible. So I'm not too concerned. I thought my body fat was going to be a little bit lower, but for a baseline, it's actually a pretty good and reasonable place to start. So this is the baseline: 197 pounds, 95 pounds of muscle. And the goal is to push those numbers up. Let's increase our body weight, increase our skeletal mass, skeletal lean muscle mass, but keep our body fat percentage at the same or decrease, which is tough to do because when you're at a surplus of calories, usually you're going to gain some sort of body fat. We're going to see what we can do and try to keep that at baseline. The next section is pretty interesting. It gives you a segmental breakdown of each of your limbs: right arm, left arm, right leg, left leg, and your trunk, to see if you're proportionate. Usually if you're a righty, you may have a little more muscle mass in your right arm. If you have an injury to your hip, left hip, you might have a little less muscle mass in your left hip, stuff like that. Functionally, my numbers come back as everything's being pretty symmetrical and pretty balanced. So now we can use this to see where we gained muscle mass too, which is really cool because I've been focusing really hard on gaining some size in my legs, and I feel like my quads and hamstrings have grown. However, I've never done an in-body before this, so I don't know where the muscle mass was all stored. So it'll be really cool to see when I do put on some mass and I do put on some muscle, where it is distributed in my body. Right underneath, body composition history. This is basically just every time you step on the InBody, it's just going to input data next to it and we can track where we're at from time to time. So over here on the right side, it is visceral fat, and it's based on your age and the amount of visceral fat that you have on your body. But we're looking for a number that's less than 100, usually on a scale of 0 to 20, 0 to 200. We kind of just break it down in sections of 10. We want to make sure that we're below that 100 mark. Visceral fat, what it is, it's the amount of fat surrounding the organs in your body. So we look at that, and below it, we're looking at a segmental fat analysis. So it's kind of interesting to see that really no fat is on my arm, 1 pound of fat on each arm, 4 pounds of fat on each leg, and then most of my fat is stored on my trunk, which is pretty typical. I feel like most of my fat is stored on my lower back and on the trunk, which are always the hardest parts to lose fat for most individuals. And as we all know, we can't target certain areas of losing fat. It's just kind of a global increase or decrease of body fat. Now, one of the interesting research parameters is basal metabolic rate. And what the basal metabolic rate means is just to live, right? Just to breathe, just to keep your heart pumping, just to, if you were to lay all day while you're sleeping, my actual baseline of the amount of calories that I burn throughout the day. That's not me talking. That's not me walking around. That's just me completely living, right? This is the amount of calories that I would need to sustain my life because that's the amount of calories that I'm burning throughout the day. So, what does this all mean? The plan over the next 8 to 12 weeks, while I do a lean bulk, is to increase the calories, keep the protein high, and I'm going to carb cycle. In a separate video, I'm going to go breaking down how I'm going to carb cycle depending on the training day that I'm doing. But we do have access to the INBODY, and we're going to be able to track our body composition as time goes on, which is amazing. If I can push my muscle mass from 95 pounds to over 100, I'm going to be super happy. And if I'm able to do that while keeping my body fat percentage at 15 or even lower, that is a huge, huge win. I know personally, when it comes to summertime, I try to get that body fat percentage 8, 9%. Anything below 10%, which I've done pretty much every summer consistently. But it's good to know exactly where I'm at. So I want to make sure I gain muscle mass while decreasing body fat or maintaining my body fat. When it comes time to start shredding and cutting again, what I can do is I can watch my body fat percentage go down while trying to keep my lean muscle mass at an all-time high. So the goal of this bulk is to make sure our lean muscle mass goes up, keeping our body fat neutral or increased just a little bit. And then when it's time to shred, we're doing the opposite, right? We're keeping our lean muscle mass high and then we're dropping our skeletal body fat percentage as low as we can while maintaining as much lean muscle tissue as we can. I'll be documenting this entire process, all the meals, all the training sessions, all the different assessments, INBODY, VO2 max testing, mental cognition tests, all that cool stuff. So if you like this kind of content, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment, please subscribe to the channel. It'll mean a lot to me. If you've struggled with bulking and taking your bulk too far, this is the content for you. This channel is totally for you. This series is going to be for you.